You're listening to the On the Bounce podcast, the show that is the ultimate source for all MLS fantasy news, tips, and everything else you need to dominate your leagues. Me, I'm JK, and I'm joined as always by my two hosts, Brady and Jarvis. Together, us three make up On the Bounce, and we're here to give you the best advice we can, along with some pretty great entertainment. Now, with all this out the way, let's jump right into today's episode.
Oh, yeah. What's going on, everybody? You know who it is. It's me, JK, bringing you another episode of the On the Bounce podcast. I got with me, as always, I'm going to kick it off on a reverse order. Josh Jarvis, big baby over here. What's going on today, lad?
What's going on today, boys?
You know, we're coolin', we're chillin', coming off a hot weekend of MLS action, but like always, you know who else got with me? Gravy the Gaffer. Brady, what's going on today?
Moy, lads. It's a beautiful day, and I'm happy to be back with the On the Bounce lads.
It's time. So episode 4 is here. It is currently Tuesday, March 19th. We're recording this on Monday, the 18th. So we're going to bring to you a spicy episode. We're going to be doing some Week 3 recap, going over all of the crazy games that we just witnessed over the weekend, a little bit of fantasy implication, going over the Dream Team of the Week, the average scores, all that good stuff. And then, of course, on Friday's episode, that's the big one. That's the one that we give you our key players of the week, our key starters of the week. We'll make some bets, we'll make some wagers, we'll give you our captains, all that good stuff. But if you're brand new, if this is your first time listening to On the Bounce, thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you're listening to us on something cool like Podbean. Shout out to Podbean.
Shout out to the
iTunes,
Bean.
Spotify, YouTube, anything like that. But be sure to follow us, subscribe to us wherever you're listening, and hit us up on Twitter at OTBounce. And be sure to check out our blog, otbounce.com. We pretty much turn our podcast into articles and a ton more exclusive articles over there. So make sure you connect with us and say hey. But now that all that's out the way, let's jump right in to a Week 3 recap. So anything stick out to you guys over the weekend? Of course, the FCC match, but we'll save that for last. So anything else, Brady? Like, what did you see this weekend?
I saw more dominance from the Sounders. Another great week for those boys. They're looking like definitely the early favorites for the Supporter Shield. Saw the Red Bulls show up. DC United put the smack down. It was a good week. I mean, I think fantasy scoring was a little bit down overall, but there was definitely some good games, entertaining games.
Yeah, how about you, Jarvis?
I mean, a lot of what he said, the Red Bulls definitely showed up. San Jose, still looking pretty terrible. I can't believe that DC 5-0'd Salt Lake. I did not think it was going to be that serious at all.
Big.
Yeah, Brady was calling for DC to wreck, and they did. And man, DC United is turning that Audi Stadium into like a fortress over there. They have just been putting in a hurt all week or all season over there.
You don't enter and leave unscathed. No. I'll tell you that much.
No, you
That's
don't.
a fact.
And Frank DeBoer, boys.
Frank DeBoer is
out.
looking rough.
DeBoer out.
We're having... It's a weird season. Like, we've been banging on ATL since our very first podcast, but we were saying last week that this could be the week that they finally like do something on the pitch and in fantasy, but another 1-1 draw with Philly, who is just not playing good football this season. No. So that's just, it's weird. And then another not terrible, but another team that's off to a slow start, New England, almost stole a point from Toronto, but that boy Josie Altidore scored a late game winner to help them avoid that. It was, like Brady said, though, it was a weird week because there was a lot of high-scoring games, 4 goals, 3 goals, 5 goals, 3 goals, 3 goals, 2 goals, 3 goals, but yet me and him just counted before the podcast, there was only 25 players to score over 10 points in fantasy. So it was a weird week. We'll touch on the fantasy averages and what we scored, stuff like that, but like Brady said and Jarvis is saying, it was a really weird week fantasy.
Definitely
a lot of weird guys scored points, or like everyone just kind of had like 5 to 7. So, that's going to happen a lot. And over these next 2 weeks, it's going to be some more weird people scoring points because the international duty's hitting, the bye weeks are hitting, all that stuff. But that's just another reason to make sure you always tune into our Friday podcast before the weekend starts.
Facts.
So anything else that you guys want to touch on, like game-wise over the weekend before we jump into the fantasy recaps?
I want to say shout out to Jarvis for calling, even though he actually called it like on the dot. He said Atlanta United was going to struggle, but he likes Barco. And Barco put a goal in and had a decent week. So Josh Jarvis, shout out to you.
Shout out to him.
That's everyday stuff, boys.
It truly is.
You can't
I'm
stump
very
me.
lightweight. I'm
can't
surprised
stump
at
me.
how good all of us have been this season so far on pretty much predicting who's going to play decent, who's going to get goals, stuff like that. Let's hope we continue our hot start.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's jump right into some fantasy recap for the week. So just a little overview real quick. The average points for all teams in MLS Fantasy was 62 points this week. So like we said, it was a down week. I think last week the average was more towards the mid-70s. So it was a weird week. The Dream Team of the week scored, 180?
Yeah.
Let me double check that. Yeah, 182 points was the Dream Team. So obviously, if you did that, you're actually Rain Man. But we had our 3 FCC boys in the Dream Team of the week: Spencer Ritchie in net, Matthew Duplain and Kendall Watson in the back line. Then you had DC United Jara, Gaston Sorrow from the Crew, continuing his hot streak, being in the Dream Team of the week again. Junior Moreno from DC United, Piatti from Montreal, Royer from the Red Bulls, Gill from the Revs, Wayne Rooney, who absolutely smashed the highest points of the year so far with his hat trick and assist and all of that stuff, and then also Ellis from Houston. So that's the Dream Team of the week. Like I said, the average was 62. I think, like we've been saying, it was a weird week. I ended up scoring 80. Brady, what'd you score on the week?
I had 71.
And then Jarvis, what'd you drop?
I had a low 58 on the week.
Yeah, so it was a rough week. You pretty much had to have some of these guys in the Dream Team to get you like in the double digits. Because like we said, only 25 people got more than 10. And 8 of those people were only 10. So, rough week. Hopefully you guys did good. Let us know on Twitter or hit us up in any of our social medias or DMs. What'd you score in the week? Show us your team of the week, all that good stuff. But so there's the little overview before we jump into it. And now we're going to jump into one of the most popular segments, the winners and losers of the week. So in this short segment, we're going to break down to you each one of our winners and losers, or a couple winners and losers from the week in fantasy. It's going to be players, it could be teams, all that good stuff. But I'm going to go ahead and kick it off to you, Brady. Give us a winner of the week.
So I'm kicking it off with my winner of the week, a boy that I picked as one of my key starters from last week, Wayne Rooney.
Wazza!
As Joey mentioned, this guy had a massive week. He popped off with a hat trick and an assist and an absolute molly-whopping of Real Salt Lake, as a lot of people expected, including us on the podcast. So this guy, he played a full 90. As I said, 3 goals, 1 assist. He took 11 shots in this game,
he was letting them
which
rip.
is insane. He had 5 key passes as well, so he was really involved in the offense, kind of playing that 10 role as well. He hit a bonus point as well. I mean, that was quite the way to break your duck for the season.
Yeah,
he was goalless.
Snapped the duck.
He snapped the duck in half. I mean, he was having people a little worried to start out the year with 5 points and 2 points in his first 2 games. But I mean, wow, what a way! If you captained him, he got you 46 points.
I mean,
I don't know if I would expect.
It's just insane.
I don't know if I'd expect that every single week, but I mean, I would expect him to be in the top 5 forwards at the end of the year. I'd expect him and Lucho Acosta, his little bub, the Lucha Roos stack, to be very solid every week, and especially when these guys are at home. I'm strongly considering every single game when these guys are at home. I mean, they just put a smackdown off the turnbuckle with a 5-0 victory against Real Salt Lake. So, big week. My winner, Wayne Rooney.
I like it. All right, I'm going to piggyback off you for one of my winners of the week. It's Junior Moreno, a midfielder for DC. And if you listened to our last episode last Friday, Brady was adamant about the DC United boys. He was talking about Lucho, talking about Wayne, and I also mentioned some of their defenders and midfielders, and one that we were talking about was Junior Moreno. So he came in at only 7 mil the past week, and he was an absolute steal if you started him. He dropped a huge 14 points, racking up 2 key assists to Wayne, and helping DC keep the clean sheet. And as you guys know, the midfielders get that nice 1 point bonus for clean sheet, which sometimes is a nice, make or break for your week. So he's a big part of DC's high-powered offense, and I really think he's a guy that you should look for going forward. Currently, right now, he's actually 6th overall in fantasy scoring on the season. He's got 29 points. So obviously that 14-point boosted him a ton, but he's still only $7.5 million on the year. So he's a guy to look forward to getting in your starting lineup, and pretty much all of DC United is. There's currently, in the top 10 scoring, there's 4 DC United players in top 10 overall MLS fantasy points.
Dang.
2 are defenders, one's Junior Moreno, and one's Wayne Rooney. So DC looks like a team that you got to go all in on for fantasy, especially for some good matchups. So there's one of my winners of the week. Jarvis, who's one of yours?
Big Gaston Sorrow, boys.
Gaston.
Another great week from him with 15 fantasy points, which is his highest on the season.
He's going off.
Yeah, it's his second goal in the year. The 5-point clean sheet, the 2 points for 90 minutes, a point for passing, cleared balls, and their schedule is absolute cake for the next 4 weeks. So it's just going to keep going up. He's up 1.5 million on the year, only at 6 million still. So if you haven't jumped on the Sorrow train yet, it's not too late.
No, and like you were saying, their schedule's cake. He's only still at 6 mil, and he's still, now this week, he's leading the MLS in scoring in fantasy. He's 3 points clear of Carlos Vela and Darwin Quintero with 36 points. So, like Jarvis said, if you're not on that train, you need to get on that train. That's a big one to get. All right, Jarvis, hit us with another winner. We'll work our way back.
Okay. Let's see here. For my second winner, Alberth Ellis, forward for Houston.
All right.
Yeah, what a week from him. He had a goal and 2 assists. They absolutely just picked apart the Whitecaps. I'm interested to see what he does in the next few weeks because they have some pretty... It's not really an easy schedule, not a hard schedule. But he didn't do well the first 2 weeks, so I'm not sure if this is going to be like a 1 week kind of thing or if this is something you're going to be wanting to rely on week in and week out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. That's a solid pick, and I'm glad you mentioned that this was his big coming out party. But you issued a warning. Maybe he's not going to do this all the time, but it'll definitely be fun to find out.
Yeah.
So I'm going to jump in with my other winner of the week. My last winner of the week is FC Cincinnati as a whole. Now, we didn't talk about this in the early part, but if you guys have been listening to us or follow us on social media, all 3 of us are diehard FC Cincinnati fans. That's where we're all from. It was just an insane week. They started off their inaugural MLS home opener in actual stunning fashion, hitting Portland Timbers with a 3-0 victory. So the reason, though, that they're winners of the week for fantasy is because I think it's start time to start buying some FC Cincinnati players in fantasy. They all started off a little rocky, so they're all down in prices, so you can get some gems. Remember earlier I mentioned 3 of them were in the Fantasy Dream Team of the Week. You got guys like Spencer Ritchie in the net with 9 points over the weekend. Matthew Duplain and Kendall Waston both had 14 points on the back line. So the scoring doesn't stop there, though. Alan Cruz up top on the wing had 9 points. Alvis Powell, a defender, had 8 points. Darren Maddox and Nick Hagland both also scored 7. So there was a ton of scoring coming out of FC Cincinnati, and I know it was their first home game. Those 32,000 fans are really going to want to up your game, but I think it really is the start of FCC waking up in fantasy and having some real value. And it doesn't hurt that their next 2 matches are against New England Revolution and Philly Union, 2 of the lower tier teams in the Eastern Conference. So I think it's starting to yeah, you heard me. It's time to start keeping an eye on these FC Cincinnati boys for fantasy. But that's another thing we'll get into later in the week. Friday, we'll give you some key starts. But that's one of my big winners of the week, all of FC Cincinnati as a whole. Brady, you got any more winners, or are we transitioning over to the losers?
We can move on to the losers, and I can start it.
Hit us.
All right, lad. A loser of the week. It's a guy who was a winner the first 2 weeks and kind of disappointed this week. I'm talking about Darwin Quintero. He really hurt you this week. He spent a lot of budget on him, $12 million. He only got you 4 points. That's $3 million per fantasy point, which is a big ouch.
My Lord.
It was not really like the offense just got completely shut out either. It was kind of just like he wasn't in the converting plays. His teammates, Gregus and Rodriguez, knocked in the goals for the Loons, and then Metanier had the lone assist. And Quintero really wasn't getting the bonus points like he kind of was. He was getting about 3 bonus points a game the first 2 matches. It really hurt my team this week, having him in the starting 11. His value did still rise, $500K. So it's not like a total loss. You still gain some budget, which is a big positive. And I was kind of struggling. I think I was falling behind a little bit in budget compared to like the top teams in the leagues that we're in. And I feel like I caught up a little bit at least having him in my lineup. So it wasn't a total loss. You can sell him off this week because he is getting a little expensive. But you do have to keep in mind that he's averaging 11 fantasy points a game. I don't know if he's going to be in my lineup this week, just due to there's so much value in other spots in the league, especially with some other forwards. But you never know. He was a loser this week, but I'm not worried about the rest of the year. And he might just revisit my lineup next week. I'm not sure yet.
Okay, so he's a loser, but you're not worried about him at all. It's just one weird week.
Correct.
Okay, I got you. All right, I'm going to jump right in with my loser of the week. I only got one, and it is the Portland Timbers. Going right back to my last winner, which was FC Cincinnati, it is the Portland Timbers finding themselves in the losers of the week for me. Now, the reason they are is because it's been a very rough start for them this year. In only 3 matches, they've allowed 10 goals in while only scoring 4.
Ouch.
So they've kind of been flying under our radar because we haven't hammered on them as much as we should. We've been doing, ATL dirty all season, but Portland's doing way worse on paper. And also, they have one of the better rosters in the MLS on paper, but something's just not clicking on the pitch and definitely not in fantasy. The most productive player they've had so far this season has been Diego Valeri, who's, obviously he's a stud. He's an MLS star. And he's got 25 points this year in fantasy, but that's really heavily weighted on his first week 1 where he had 15 points.
Right.
So since then he's only scored 6 and 4, but he's still valued at $11.6 million. That's Carlos Vela, Wayne Rooney, and almost Darwin Quintero money, so that's a hard pass for me. I can't see me spending almost $12 million on a guy who's not putting up, solid double-digit points almost every week. And overall, Portland is just not looking good in fantasy. The defense is obviously sketchy with 10 goals let in 3 matches. So
Ouch.
They're definitely a big loser of the week, and I think I'm going to avoid them like the plague in fantasy. Jarvis, hit us with your back-to-back losers, and then we'll let Brady finish it out with his last loser of the week.
Okay, so I'm going to expand off what you just said and talk about Sebastian Blanco for a second, midfielder for the Portland Timbers. So if you played him last week, it was $10.7 million to put him in your lineup, and he got you a big 2 points.
Yikes.
Week 1 against Colorado, he had 10 points, 5 of them from a goal. Last week, he had 5 points against LAFC, and this week he had 2. But the one thing that I hate to see is he played 80 minutes, had the 2 points for playing over 60, and he only had 28 passes completed, which is terrible for someone, a midfielder in general, but for $10.7 million. And that's literally all he did. He wasn't involved in the game at all. He had a single shot that wasn't threatening. He really pooped in his big boy pants today, boys. And then moving on from him, Kai Kamara, forward for the Colorado Rapids, only had 1 point against Sporting Kansas City. He played the full 90, but he had a yellow, so that took 1 point away from him. And other than scoring in week 1 against Portland, he's really struggled to find his sauce this year, but I'm not too worried about it because their first 3 games are as bad as FCC's. They had Portland, Seattle, and Sporting Kansas. And their next 3 games are against FC Dallas, Houston, and Orlando. So I expect him to probably be startable. Yeah, definitely find a sauce. Probably be startable the next 3 weeks. But he's at 9.3, which isn't too bad of a value for him. So keep on the lookout for Kai Kamara.
Yeah, that could be a big one to that could come in handy for all these international duties coming up for sure.
Oh,
I like that. All right, Brady, who's your last loser of the week?
It hurts me to add this guy as a loser because I was very adamant about this guy for the last 2 weeks, really. And it's Nick DeLeon, defender from Toronto. He only had 2 points this week. I was really feeling it. He's a defender who's been playing out on the wing as an attacking midfielder, basically, for the first game of the year at least. And this week he kind of also pooped in his big boy pants, as Jarvis so eloquently stated. You didn't lose much value with him because he was very cheap, and he did rise in value still. So it wasn't like the worst week ever. You gained value, but I was really adamant about this guy, and I was really feeling it. And then next week, to add on to it, he's got another bye week. So it's going to be a time to sell off Nick DeLeon, unfortunately, and kind of revisit it maybe a few weeks after his bye week to see if he can actually put it together and be like a huge value this season. I think he was in most everyone's starting lineup this last week. At least the three of us, I think he was in ours, and then I saw a few other people.
Yeah, we had a couple comments on our Instagram and Twitter talking about how they agreed with us that he's such a good find, but he let us all down.
He was actually in 15% of lineups this week, which is one of the highest numbers I've seen for any player in fantasy. So it was rough to have him let us down like that. I'm not losing hope. I still think he's going to be a good value. Again, he's only $6 million right now. He did rise $500K with only 2 points because of his form. So I would look ahead. Make sure you sell him off this week because next week is that bye. But better times are ahead. But right now, Nick DeLeon is unfortunately a loser.
All right, I like it. Sometimes you gotta face the hard, sad facts.
I gotta eat the crow.
You have to sometimes, but I like your take. I think he's gonna rise again for sure, like a great phoenix. All right, moving on to our last segment of the show, which is our favorite segment of the show. It is our Hidden Gem segment. So if you're new around here, this is a great segment where we bring you about 2 to 3 players every week that are flying under the radars. Either they had a breakout week, or we see a lot of value in them because they're going for cheap, but they're putting up good numbers. So these are a lot of great things that you guys need to know because, once again, finding the value in players is what helps you dominate your leagues. Saving a buck here or there can really help you dominate. So I'm going to kick it off with my hidden gem, or one of my hidden gems of the week. It's another FC Cincinnati guy, Darren Maddox. Now, the reason I'm saying he's a hidden gem is because he's played in every game so far this season, but mainly off the bench and mainly as a wing play, and that's not his preferred position. He's more of a striker. And last week against Portland, he actually came in for an injured Fernando Adi, and he came in at striker. So he played 45 minutes and ended up putting 7 fantasy points together due to 2 big chances created, 5 key passes, and 1 really great assist. So I think he's a guy that you have to look at because he's only $5.9 million as a forward, which is crazy cheap, and if Fernando Adi actually misses some time with that ankle injury, Maddox is a guy that's going to be a starting striker week in and week out for FC Cincinnati because that's a position they greatly lack depth in. The only thing you got to watch out for is that he is going to be on international duty with Jamaica for the next week or so. So maybe Adi gets healthy in that time, or maybe Maddox might pick up a knock when he's on international duty. But that's another reason. Just make sure you follow us on Twitter at OTBounce. We keep you up to date with all of the injury news, especially people that we talk to in the podcast. But that's one of my hidden gems. Darren Maddox, $5.9 million, and could be a possible starting striker here in the future. Brady, who's one of your hidden gems?
All right, I'm going to kick it off and piggyback off your FCC hype with another FCC player. This podcast is going to be filled with them because they had such a magnificent week.
Literally.
We got Matthew DePlane. This guy was a huge hidden gem this week, and I'm seeing him going in my starting lineup for sure this week. This guy had the rare defender goal as well as clean sheet bonus this week, knocking in 14 fantasy points. He also got some bonus points for having balls recovered. My guy was only owned by 0.28% of players this week in fantasy.
My God.
He had an insane value of only 378,000 per fantasy point, which is like 10 times better than Quintero this week. Literally 10 times better.
Literally.
So his FCC really put it all together this week. Huge emotional victory at home for the first home victory. DePlane came up huge, especially in fantasy. Not to mention that this guy's next two games are really good matchups, like Joey said, against the Revs and Philly. And, as he also said, there's a lot of guys on international duty, so it's looking like he's going to be a 100% start in each week in the lineup, either as a center back or a left back. So this guy's big. You got to throw him in your lineup. Great value. You got to throw in Matthew DePlane.
Get a ticket and ride the plane.
You got to ride it.
All right, Jarvis, who's one of your hidden gems of the week?
All right, so for my first hidden gem of the week, I'm going to go with Memo Rodriguez.
Okay.
Did you get the memo, Rodriguez?
I did.
I should have.
Midfielder for Houston. He's only going for 5.6 mil right now, so it's there's a really good value. But he scored 12 this week. He played 74 minutes and had 2 goals. I'm loving him. He scored last week against Montreal, scored twice this week, and he's really getting involved. He played a little bit for him in the CONCACAF, and then ever since they got knocked out of that, it looks like he's going to be someone that's going to be starting week in, week out for him. But he was really involved, a lot of passes, 5 shots, so they're definitely looking to feed him the ball. So he's someone I'm picking up, and I think I'm going to play him, let's see, who do they have next game? Colorado? Yeah, I like that. He has Colorado, then San Jose, so I'm probably playing in the next 2 to 3 weeks for sure.
Yeah, I like that pick a lot. All right, Brady, let's reverse it back. So who's another one of your hidden gems?
All right, I'm going to hit you guys with Victor Cabrera from the Montreal City Boys. So we got this guy as my second big week. Big Money Vic is quietly off to a huge start this week, or a huge start this season. Super consistent, even if the numbers are a little low. 5 points, 4 points, and then 9 points this week. Coming off the clean sheet bonus that he just had. So I'm loving this guy. I think he is an awesome value at hold please.
Wow.
5.6 million. I mean, he's been rising every week, 0.3, 0.3, and then 0.5. He was ranked 23 this week. I mean, this guy's an outstanding value. I think he's got a really solid goalkeeper in Evan Bush, and I think their whole defense is really solid. They've allowed 1 goal, 2 goals, then 1 goal. I think they're just really like clocking it in and getting ready for these next few games against SKC and NYC. I think this guy is an outstanding value, and you need to throw him in your lineup.
Okay, I like it. All right, I'll give you my last hidden gem. It is a 19-year-old from Toronto. His name is Ayo Akinola. So he made a huge splash in his first start of the season for Toronto, scoring a goal, getting an assist, and getting a nice 10 fantasy points. The reason I really like him is because I was watching the end of that game, and he was just all over the pitch. I mean, like, the end of the game is in, like, the last 20 to 30 minutes, where, like, guys are gassed. It was, like, 30 degrees in outdoor Toronto weather, and this 19-year-old was just all over, just rapidly flying around. So I really like him because I think he's an exciting guy to watch. Now, I don't think he's a starter. Obviously, they got Josie Altidore at striker, but he was playing the wing most of the game, so who knows what will happen. Maybe it's like a Efrain Alvarez situation where the coach really likes him, so he might get a lot of playing time off the bench, could sneak in and start due to injuries or other things like that. But he is only $5 million right now. He went up $500,000 on the week, and that only brings him to $5 million. So he's another guy that if he does get the start in the 11, or if he is on the 18 on the bench, he could be worth putting in your bench, or could like in a pinch, putting in your starting rotation, because he's got that quality to make a big splash. And keep your eye on him over the next week or two, because he's actually going to be on international duty with the U.S.'s U20s. So if he does good there, who knows? Maybe he will get more playing time with Toronto. So that's just another guy I think we should keep an eye on. 19-year-old Ayo Akinola for Toronto.
Another young
Jarvis,
boy from JK, eh?
The young boys. I'm liking all the 19-year-olds. All the spicy boys with 5-star potential.
There you go.
All right, Jarvis, your last hidden gem.
Sure. So Chris Pontius, boys, from
the
Pontius Pilot.
Both of those. The Wild Boy Pontius Pilot is what I meant to say.
Yeah, of course.
Midfielder for the LA Galaxy. He had 9 points this week, which isn't anything crazy. He did score, and what I'm liking out of him is he's looking like he's getting involved more. Week 1, he only played 12 minutes, but week 2, he played 90, and week 3, he got 85. And he has been involved in the attack a lot. He had 53 completed passes as well as 5 shots in week 3, so they're looking to get him involved a bit more. So he's someone I'm probably going to put on my bench and see if I can't get some sneaky value out of him. Maybe he goes up another mil or so.
I like that. And week 2, he started striker for him because they're still out Ibra.
Exactly.
So that's a real big value for him if he could play striker and he's listed at midfield.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that. All right, so that pretty much wraps up the episode. Is there any closing remarks or anything that you guys want to add or that you forgot to say before we finish this up?
How about you guys give a little personal experience about the FCC game?
I
apologize to the Portland fan that sat directly behind me.
Yeah, that was their fault. They had their own section. For some reason, they decided to sit in the general admission with all the FCC fans.
R.I.P.
Yeah, it was fun. Me and Jarvis went to the very first inaugural MLS home game for FC Cincinnati. We've said pretty much, we've all been fans of FCC since day one. Me and Brady were at a friendly match before the USL season even kicked off 4 years ago, so we've been about FC Cincinnati. But man, just being down there with 32,000 people packed in was insane. It was so loud, the energy was crazy, and of course, scoring 3 goals was just absolutely ignorant. You want to add anything to that, Jarvis, about your experience?
We were able to get the last 2 inaugural scarves in the stadium by pure luck, and I almost had a literal heart attack because I thought I wasn't going to get one.
After waiting in line for 30 minutes, that would have been extra awful to wait and get nothing.
If you could,
big fat 0.
If you could have only gotten one, would you have split it in half, or would you have kept it?
Yeah, I would have cut off like the tassels for him.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, I wouldn't have, because I'm the one that bought them both, because he was behind me, and I was just like panicked. Like, give me both.
Literally said, "Give me both." That's how it's done around here. You got to do it. But yeah, it was fun, and like we said last episode, if you guys out there are any other supporters of any other MLS club, and you want to plan an away day, you got to make Cincinnati an away day stop. It's such a fun environment because it's the college campus, but they hold 30,000. It's never going to be under 20 this season. There's no chance. Like, it's going to be always electric feeling. So if you're another supporter of any other MLS team, make it an away day and find On the Bounce boys down at Nippert, and we'll have a pretzel. We'll share a brew. We'll do something lit. But it's fun, man. That environment's insane. But I think that's going to do it for today's episode. Episode number 4 of On the Bounce podcast is a wrap. Thank you all for listening. If you're tuning in, like we said earlier, on iTunes, Spotify, Podbean, no more SoundCloud. We're over on Podbean now. So if you want to find us over there, that's otbounce.podbean.com. You can find us on our own website, otbounce.com, at otbounce on Twitter and Instagram, all that good stuff. But I think that does it for the episode. JK is out. Brady, Jarvis, give him a shout.
Moy.
Yep.
Have it.
Yoink. All right, guys. We will see you Friday back here for the greatest episode that you're going to hear this week. All right. Deuces.